G'day there guys, Markee here, back again with another episode of r/Entitled People. Now I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn on the barbie, worship Steve Irwin, and just have a bloody good episode today. Posted by user Tales from My Crib, titled She Nearly Got Arrested. In 2008, I was newly married. I went to pick up my daughter after a rough altercation at the pickup the prior day with my husband. We had just discovered we had suffered a miscarriage that afternoon, so we wanted to get my daughter and get home. My daughter was just over 1 year old at the time, so I had to physically pick her up and carry her. She could walk, but it was easier to carry her to the car. And my ex-boyfriend, XB, started yelling awful things. He called me a tramp, told me I was a tramp for getting married so soon after our breakup. We had broken up 2 years prior, before I even knew I was pregnant with our daughter, and that I needed to get some sort of control over my psychotic lifestyle. I was an assistant preschool teacher and was in college classes at the time to become a lead. My husband was standing at the back end of the car near the trunk when I turned to put my daughter in. Of course, I had to get my own jab in. Ex-boyfriend's mum is a total Karen. She's psycho and entitled in every way imaginable. Ex-boyfriend was ranting about how horrible I am as a person, and I turned and said, "At least I wasn't raised by a psycho tramp. Shut up and leave me alone." I turned back around to buckle my daughter into her car seat when I suddenly heard commotion behind me. Ex-boyfriend and his father attempted to rush my car while I had my back turned. My husband stepped between us and began recording on his phone. Ex-boyfriend's mother called the police. She said my husband attempted to assault my ex-boyfriend, but because my husband had recorded, they got in trouble. I ended up filing a restraining order because even with the police there, ex-boyfriend attempted to charge me with a tool in his hand. They were changing a tire on his car when I had arrived. A week later, ex-boyfriend was to meet me near some golden arches to pick up our daughter for a 6-hour visit, as that was all he was permitted to during the first stage of the restraining order. Pickup time was slated for 10 a.m. I got there at 9:45 and checked in with the officer who was to monitor the exchange. Wonderful sheriff's deputy from that town, by the way. We sat outside the restaurant and talked, exchanged stories of our churches. He had grown up with my mother, I later found out. And he even bought me an iced tea and my daughter a juice. We kept watching, and when ex-boyfriend didn't show up at 10:30, the sheriff's deputy called ex-boyfriend to inform him that, because he didn't show up, he was forfeiting his time with daughter. He instructed me to go ahead and leave as I had a long drive back home, 45 minutes one way. I received a call from the sheriff's office about 20 minutes later. They asked where I was, and I told them. They asked why I didn't wait for ex-boyfriend to pick up daughter, and I informed them that the deputy XXXXX had dismissed me because we had waited 30 minutes past pickup time. They said they would confirm it with Deputy 5X, but to have a good day, and I thanked them. Something was going on, because I later got a phone call asking me to return to the drop-off location so ex-boyfriend could have the limited time left in his visit with our daughter. I informed the deputy that we were already home, and as it was just about to be noon, I was preparing lunch and putting my then 1-year-old down for a nap. The deputy stated he understood, and I heard screaming in the background. The sheriff's deputies called me again later that day to tell me that due to an incident, they were requesting a restraining order on my daughter's behalf against ex-boyfriend's mum too, but they didn't go into the details about it. Our hearing was 2 days later. I sat in shock as the allegations were read, knowing that I hadn't committed any act being stated. My lawyer quickly informed the judge that I was not the person who committed said acts, that it was indeed the mother of ex-boyfriend. Apparently, I had missed a lot. When the deputy called me the first time from the office, it was because ex-boyfriend's mother stormed the office, demanding to have me arrested for kidnapping, saying that I wasn't at the designated meeting location for exchange and that she couldn't call me because of the restraining order, which at the time was only involving her son. Then, when the deputy and I had gotten off the phone the second time, ex-boyfriend's mum went rabid. She punched the protective glass between the deputy and her, screamed that she was going to call the mayor, demanded to speak with the head sheriff, and even tried to punch a sheriff for not immediately issuing a warrant for my arrest for kidnapping. She had to be placed in handcuffs and put into a holding cell to calm down. She threatened to murder me in my sleep, with great detail on how she could do it and get away with it. She even told the officer that she would love to see my child hurt the way that I'm hurting her precious baby boy. We were 22 at the time. She told the officer that she knows I would play dirty games and that I always get away with my bullcrap, before asking for a Bible so she could pray for the demons plaguing the corrupt sheriff's office. She finally calmed down 6 hours later and was permitted to leave, but told she would be watched and arrested if she attempted any contact with me. 3 officers testified that I was abiding by all laws and cooperative. They also spoke to the fear they had that if ex-boyfriend's mum was near me, or really anyone, she may not be able to keep herself from having more violent outbursts. I was granted a restraining order and full custody for 6 months. Ex-boyfriend would get visitations as normal every other weekend, but my husband was the only person allowed to pick up and drop off my daughter, and ex-boyfriend was to have no contact with me except email. Ex-boyfriend's mother was not allowed within 50 feet of me or my daughter during this time, and was ordered to attend anger management courses to try to become a better human being. The entire family of ex-boyfriend was ticked. He lived with his mother, so he had to move in with his grandmother to exercise his visits and had to provide proof of his change of residency to the courts before his visits could begin. In case you were wondering, the anger management classes didn't do much. She's still as entitled and crazy as ever. Posted by user She Marizaddy, titled, "I threw away my designer sunnies, refund me." This isn't some outlandish story about a horrible customer resembling the devil, but more an example of how entitled some customers act. Sorry for any grammatical errors, English isn't my first language. A few years ago, I worked in e-commerce as a customer service worker. Let me preface this with that 99% of our customer base were wonderful, and I'd often go the extra mile if we, the company, did something wrong. Because of this, I would be quite generous and always try to find a solution, no matter how complicated or strange the inquiry was. A young woman calls in and reports a pair of designer sunglasses, $300+ USD, as damaged and requested a refund because they were faulty. I told her I would look into the inquiry and asked for more information, order number, etc. When I find the order, I see it's been a year past the purchase. A pre-existent fault in a product like this is usually discovered within 6 months, but we do have a policy to investigate all inquiries within 3 years of purchase. We take issues with the product seriously and take in the product and look for defects and report any findings to production and purchase when faulty products are reported. I informed the woman that we will gladly look into the issue, but in order to do so, she needs to send the glasses to us and give her our address for free shipping. The woman then tells me that she threw the product away because it wasn't of use to her anymore. I was sort of stunned because, at least here in the country I come from, this is a very weird thing to do. Out of 7 years working within customer service, I'd never heard that one before, or since. The head of one of the departments sees me struggle to find how to help this customer, so I quickly mute the call and quickly brief her on what had happened. Head of department bursts out laughing and says that we can't help the customer. I go back to my call and ask the woman if she possibly photographed the damage. Many customers do this before contacting us, and she says no. I inform her that we sadly can't help her because we need the product in return to refund her. She asks if we can't make an exception just for her. I reply that no, unfortunately we can't. She then asks us to send her a pair of free designer sunglasses since she can't have a refund for the broken ones. I again explain to her that without, at the least, proof of the product being broken, we can't help her with a refund or a new pair of sunglasses for free, but we will gladly help to place a new order. I also mentioned to her that most companies in this country have a policy to take back damaged products in order to refund. This woman then says, but Chinese online shopping app doesn't take damaged products in return, they just refund. My mood went from sorry for the inconvenience to what the hell? We are talking about designer sunglasses valued between $200 and $500 USD. I repeat, we're sorry we can't help, and I offer her to send a pair of off-brand sunglasses in the same style as she bought, with the same UV protection as all our sunglasses, normally priced around $30 free of charge as goodwill. To this she replies, I don't use ugly cheap crap. I repeat that then we can't help her and wish her a good day, but not before she adds a snarky, I will leave a review about this. She never left a review. No idea if she couldn't be asked or if she found the error of her ways. I don't have a lot of stories, but this and the customer who demanded we stop sponsoring Pride events because straight people don't have a celebration day got to be the ones that come to mind. Posted by user Poketchdrami, titled Racist Woman at Airport. This is the first time poster here, and I'm also on mobile. This happened like almost a year ago at the Houston airport when I was on my way to visit my Canadian family from Mexico. First of all, I'm Canadian but look fairly Mexican and have a bit of an accent because I've lived most of my life in Mexico, but on to the story. I was hungry at the airport because I hadn't eaten breakfast, so I went to eat and sat at a table and noticed this couple that were in their 50s, but I didn't think much of them. So I was finished eating and I recorded a voice message to a friend. I was talking in Spanish, and when I finished, the woman who was at the table I mentioned started walking toward me, but I didn't think she was going to talk with me, so I just stared at my phone when I heard, ahem. I say, can I help you with something? Can I see your visa? In a rude tone. I don't have to show you anything. Then how do I know you're not here illegally? I just stared at her, waiting to see if she realized she was being an a-hole. I'm gonna call security and tell them you're here illegally. I just pulled my Canadian passport out of my pocket and put it in the front of her face and say, next time, don't be a racist a-hole. Her face got red and went back to her table with her husband. The husband looked embarrassed because it probably wasn't the first time something like that happened. I just picked up my stuff and went about my business thinking, why would I be at an airport where I obviously would need a visa if I was going to cross the country illegally? When I got to Canada and saw my family, I told them what happened and we just laughed because of the stupidity of some people. Posted by user WV Prepper, titled Entitled Neighborhood Parents Hold COVID Birthday Party in Our Yard. My significant other is the caretaker for a small private cemetery in the city. We live in a small house at the front of the 6 acres. Some of the neighbors occasionally walk their dogs there or bring their kids to learn to ride a bike. Not a big deal, and we rarely throw people out unless they're doing and selling drugs, nodding off, or exposing themselves, or come in during the night. There are usually fewer than 10 people at a time. The sign says, cemetery hours 8 a.m. to sunset. After dinner yesterday, I look out the front door to see if a package I was expecting had been delivered, when I saw a man park on the grass, get out of the car, and run across the lawn toward the back. Curious, I moved to the kitchen window, where I saw a group of several dozen people, kids and adults, clustered together. Thinking someone had gotten hurt, I opened the back door to see what was going on. I could hear them singing happy birthday. Seems they decided to have their kid's birthday party in the cemetery in the hope nobody would call it in. They stayed for about an hour. ETA, we don't have sprinklers. Plumbing and electricity came along 100 years after this was established as a cemetery. Posted by user Razor89, titled Mental Karen Tries to Get Me Jailed for Driving a Newer Car Than Hers. Backstory. As you may remember, I am self-employed and run 2 businesses. So I bought myself an almost brand new BMW G31 530D, don't mean to flex. It was only 6 months old and had only 6,000 kilometers mileage run so far. I run a used car sale shop for German vehicles besides my other business, and since my father was a passionate BMW driver, it was clear to me to follow his footsteps in behalf of cars. Back to the story. One day, I was on my way home from work at around 6 p.m. and I got hungry. I had about 150 kilometers left to drive, and I didn't want to eat dinner this late. I decided to stop by at one of the gas stations located directly at the Autobahn, motorway for the UK, highway for US. So I found a fast food restaurant, got to the drive-in counter, and ordered my food. Nothing special so far. At this point, in Germany, it wasn't allowed for fast food places to host any guests inside past 6 p.m. So I parked my car, opened the back door, and sat down in the trunk to enjoy my fast food. Shortly after I sat down, an old minivan pulled over to a stop next to me. A woman opened the door and looked at me in disgrace. I didn't think much of it and continued to eat. Suddenly, she comes directly to me and says, "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" "Hello there, I'm just eating dinner here, nothing special. Where is the owner of the car?" "That would be me. Why, is something wrong?" "Don't you dare lie to me. How can a young kid like you own something expensive like that? Besides, you don't look German at all, so you must have stolen the car." "I have a slightly darker skin tone since my mother is part Asian." "Well, She cuts me off. "I don't want to hear any more lies. I will call the police and have you arrested if you don't hand me over the keys so I can return the car to the rightful owner." "Well, go ahead and call them." I really thought that she was joking, but she actually called the police. They arrived like 20 minutes later. A policewoman, PW, and policeman, PM, got out of their car, which ironically was the same BMW G31 model that I drove, just in police colors. The policewoman came to me first and asked if everything was fine and wanted an explanation of what happened here from my point of view. So when I tried to begin to explain things to her, the entitled mother came over to us, pushed herself between me and the policewoman, and shouted at me for being a liar, even though I haven't said anything yet. "Why are you being so nice to him? He stole that car. He is surely not even old enough to drive a car anyway. Don't waste any time. Arrest him and hand me over the keys. I know the owner of the car and I will return it to him right now." "Ma'am, you have to calm down. I will not arrest someone because you tell me to do so. I will do my job and first ask him a few things, and then we will see what will happen. But for now, I am asking you to step aside to my colleague and talk to him first." "Why should I talk to him? Why don't you just do your job? I'm a citizen of this country and I pay your income. Do what I want." Yes, she actually said that. Policeman says, "Don't you realize that you are currently acting very strangely and this gentleman over there is just being quiet and calm all the time? Behave yourself or you will face some serious problems." After that, the entitled mother went with the policeman and I got asked by the policewoman again about what happened. I explained to her that the entitled mother thought I would have stolen the car, that I don't have a license, and even acted a bit racist to me. The policewoman was very friendly and asked for my documents such as ID, driver's licensing, and my paperwork for the car. After I handed her everything, she went to the police car and checked everything. In the meanwhile, I just waited and played a bit on my phone. A couple of minutes later, she came back and said everything was fine and asked me if I wanted to press charges against her for being racist. I declined, since I really just wanted to eat dinner and drive home. Her colleague came over to me and they talked about the whole situation. It was very clear that the woman made false accusations against me, and they told me that I could leave if I wanted, since there was nothing wrong with me. When I went to the back door of my car to close it, the entitled mother came to me again and tried to reach into my pockets and shouted, "Where are the keys? You don't deserve this car. I will take it from you now, you foreign— Oh, just go and steal another car and fool the police again." I really couldn't believe that someone would be that stupid and crazy in their head to do something like that. The police quickly handcuffed her and put her into the car. I was asked if everything was fine and if I'm sure that I don't want to press charges against her. This time I said yes because I considered this action as a personal attack. Afterwards, I drove home and hoped that she would get a lot of problems, or at least got sent into psychiatry, or maybe both. God, I'd hate to be sent into psychiatry, that just sounds like the worst. Posted by user Hemeki Habami. Titled, "Entitled Kid Kills My Pet Pig and Mum Kicks His Entitled Family Out of the Apartment." I live in the Philippines, so forgive me if I make errors. This happened when I was 12 or 13. I had a pet pig, who was very, very pink and small. And I named him after a popular pork-flavored snack in the Philippines called Marty's Cracklins. So I named him Marty, and he is very adorable, and is only a baby pig at the time. He also had no other pigs to call family. Oh no! I also taught him a lot of tricks. I kept him in a large cage just outside my room's window. I always took care of him, feeding him, cleaning his cage, and washing him, and always singing him my favorite song, Ang Huling El Bimbo, whenever I got a chance, that is. One day, while I was washing Marty's cage, while Marty stood patiently beside me, I heard new voices and a small truck park in front of the empty apartment that my parents put up so other people could rent it. The truck stopped and my parents walked over to greet the people. They seemed nice at first. As soon as the truck stopped, 2 kids, one boy around my age and a girl who was about 7, stepped out and looked around for a bit. They walked by me and saw Marty. The girl squealed in delight and tried to grab Marty, and Marty immediately squeezed by me so he could hide in the cage. I tell the girl to be quiet and tell her that Marty is not comfortable around strangers. She pouts and the boy just drags her back to their family. I glared at their backs for scaring Marty, and I turned my attention towards my best friend, who was dirty inside a clean cage. I ushered Marty to come out, and I cleaned him, and fed him, and sang him several songs, including my favorite. Let's go from the top. Ang Huling El Bimbo. Alright, back to the story. Days passed, and I kept close to Marty, as the girl and the boy bothered him and forced him to play with them. I told my parents about this, and they go over to the kids' parents and set them off with the warning the parents understood, but the next day the pieces of crap still came. Clearly their parents did not care, even when Dad repeated the warning for a few times when the kids stepped past a line. A joyful day comes when some of my mum's friends from Davao came. And I was excited because I'm gay. And some of my mum's friends were gay too. Oh my God. And they taught me what to search for in a boy, and it was always fun hanging around with them, ignoring the faces of the judgmental. They invited us to a road trip to Baguio, and that means Marty would be left alone. Although I did have some relatives that lived beside our house. They were all very busy, and so are my cousins, because they're either hanging out in a basketball court or in a mall, so Marty would be left alone. I voted to stay, but luckily, one of my cousins, who was such a sweetheart, told me that she'll take care of Marty and that I should just enjoy myself. I thanked her and warned her about the annoying kids, and she told me that she'll keep an eye out for them. We left for Baguio for 3 days, and when I came back, I was very excited to see Marty again. I went inside the house and made him a milk bottle, and I ran to his cage. What I saw made my heart break a bit. I tried to wake Marty, and he woke up. Sad thing is, he looked fatter, and he looked like he was sick, and he walked over to me slowly. I picked him up and comforted him. I tried giving him the bottle, but he moved his head away. I guessed that my cousin already fed him, so I just cradled him like a baby and sang to him. Ang Huling El Bimbo. A few minutes or so, my cousin walked to me with a milk bottle in her hand. I looked at her confused and told her that Marty was still full from the milk she gave him earlier. My cousin said that she hasn't fed Marty yet. Then it dawned on me, the POSs must have done this. Marty was still a baby and he couldn't stomach that much food, and his tummy already looked bloated, and he already took deep breaths rather than normal ones. I personally went over the POS's house and told them to stop bothering Marty. The entitled kid stayed silent, and the entitled mum spoke up. I'll translate what she said in Tagalog to English. My kids didn't even go near him. Also, your parents told us not to bother that stinky pig of yours. This ticked me off a bit because no one calls Marty stinky other than me. So I told her that if I catch her kids bothering Marty, I'll tell my parents to kick them out. So nightfall came, and I lay on my bed. Outside the window is where Marty's cage is, and I opened the window and looked below to see him sleeping. I sighed in relief when I saw him sleeping soundly, so I went to sleep. Not even a minute later, I hear a loud squeal. I looked out the window to see young girl, EK1, forcefully shoving a milk bottle into Morty's mouth. Morty, I'm a pickle, Rick. I told him to stop, and I climbed out my window and tried to pull her off. But Entitled Kid 2, the boy around my age, kept pushing me back. I was skinny and a wimp back then, and couldn't push past him, so I ran to my parents' windows and knocked on it, shouting their names. Dad opened up the window, and I cried out that they're killing Marty. Dad went out to the house and walked angrily to the Entitled Kid's house, while I tried to push Entitled Kid 1 away from Marty, and Entitled Kid 2 kept blocking me. By the time the Entitled Kid's parents came over, the squealing stopped. I saw Marty's scared face turn lifeless and dull, and I knew that I failed. The girl screeches and cries out that her pet pig died. This angered me, and for once in my life I punched the boy blocking me and took Marty and ran down the stone stairs behind our house to our backyard and hid in the trees. I heard Dad cussing at them and demanding them to move out tomorrow or he'll bring this to court. I kept crying and crying. My dad came down to see me, but told me that Marty is safe now. He climbed back up to the house, and I sat still for a while in the darkness. I stood up and went inside a tool shed and grabbed a shovel, and with each time I shoveled a piece of dirt, I kept saying sorry to Marty. I really wished I was stronger, and I just kept wishing that he's just playing dead, like I taught him to. When the hole was deep enough, I tried my best to sing my favorite song for him one last time before I buried him. I think I'm not going to sing it out of respect. The next day, Entitled Kid's family moved out, and we never heard from them again. And for a while, I was depressed and wished for so I could meet up with Marty again. I have no happy ending. I'm sorry, Marty. Rest in peace, Marty. You will be missed. Well, that's the end of today's episode, guys. I'm sorry that it went from happy to sad. I'm going to chuck you to outro, Markee. I hope he treats you better.